Plugin of the week, or plugins of the week, comes from a collaboration of Kiive Audio with AudioScape, a hardware manufacturing company that does a lot of remakes of vintage gear. They have 3 plugins that they're releasing all at the same time. VComp, which is the stay level compressor, vintage Veramute compressor from back in the 50s, broadcast limiter. We have the XR-305R, which is a spring reverb, and the Golden58 preamp, which is a tube preamp stage. These are the 3 units right here. Could probably get rid of the color palette there. So we have the Golden preamp. We can run it mic line. It's got a polarity switch. Has a full, so it's really just a preamp, so you get that. But when you hear like the added depth that it brings to the sound, you will really fall in love with it. You could do it in full or in the voice mode here, which basically gives like about a 3 dB attenuation at 40 Hertz, as they describe it. Again, we have the polarity switch. There's an auto gain here, so if you switch to the mic, it'll give you some kind of balanced control there, with it. There's not much here in terms of documentation on any of this stuff, or at least it hasn't posted yet. So I may be loose on a few of the facts, but otherwise you have all the normal stuff. This is really great. You got input-output gain controls, which you can link together. There's a width control, oversampling. We could operate it in mid-side or left-right mode. Some of these in the top menu here are different for some of the different plugins. The stay level plugin, so this is a classic. So these emulations are of AudioScape's hardware versions of these same vintage pieces. The Golden58, I don't believe I think that's their own creation. There are 2 versions of the stay level. There's a modern version, so apparently they have 2 hardware versions, and then they have the vintage version. Right, so you get something and I'm not sure exactly what the modifications are, so I apologize on that end. But you do have some separate controls with them. This is a sidechain filter, right, for the compressor. The in-out calibration, which is probably the easiest way to kind of get your gain reduction going. Just crank this in. It will pull back the output as much as it pulls the input. Then you could just do your makeup accordingly, right? And then compare the modern and vintage versions. You have to kind of set it up, but basically you have 3 different modes in the recovery: single mode, double mode, or triple mode. These are like, I believe, multiple release, separate release stages, which is a classic broadcast kind of thing, where they want that release time, the long one, to be super long. Like, in the neighborhood of 20 seconds long, like that kind of thing. Pretty straightforward there. And then this is a really, really cool one. This is an equal temperament reverb system. So it's a spring reverb. Essentially what you have are tone controls on the top, wet, dry control, input, so you could drive it a little bit if you like. There are 2 variations of it. There is the 305R and the 305. So this will have a little bit more of a vintage character to it. They each have basically a different tonal character. And then you can adjust the tone controls differently for each, right? So you can kind of see that here. It's basically all the same controls, just configured or looked a little bit differently. There's a mono drive control, a little saturation. The mono return will just output everything in mono. Which may be beneficial for certain things where you want to mono up the reverb. You could also link or unlink the 2 sides. So you could actually, if you run it, you can run it in like a dual mono mode, which is actually quite cool. All right, so let's have a little bit of a listen, kind of go through them one at a time. All right, so I just had some quick program material here. The one thing I won't mute out is the reverb, but just kind of set up a few of these plugins across a little demo session here, a quick one, and let's just kind of hear it quickly. All right, might help if I run it back to, let's see. I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us
They're building cars that drive themselves now, sending civilians into space.
All right, so I'll kind of go through this one by one because it's kind of hard. I'm not putting it on everything here, so we'll just kind of go through it quickly. Let's start with the preamp. The preamp I actually put on the sort of mix here, and then just put this on the piano. So if we just kind of listen to this on its own, this is just in line input mode. Just really beautiful, the depth that it brings in. You could also, let's see if I could do this here. I could put it into mic mode, right, with the auto gain, so it should keep the gain relatively the same. A little bit more clarity there in the mic line. I like that. And then there's the voice control here, which actually just does the little dip at 40 hertz. May not make a big difference here, but let's see. Right, and here, this is I think this is just an output level adjustment here. There's also a bias control here. So that's a subtle adjustment. I'm not sure if that is. I'm not sure from the documentation exactly how much or what that's controlling. I was expecting something that was a little bit more of a saturation type of effect, but you know, in its own subtlety, there it actually sounds quite good. But really amazing, right? It really adds like a sense of realism to the piano that kind of didn't exist before. On the other end, so that's really cool for that, just for that tonal coloration. I also have a guitar part here. Let's kind of go over this. Really adds like a great smooth, you know, warmth. And the thing about, you know, this type of limiter, anytime you look at the gain reduction meter and you see, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, it means that it's meant to work with those gain reduction settings. So if you see it and it's like, is that really 10 dB or 20 dB of gain reduction? You know, it kind of doesn't really equate that way. It's sort of a strange thing. This is a very much like a broadcast limiter kind of thing. So you'll see this also with things like the DBX compressor will also have that sort of crazy, like a very similar metering for the gain reduction amount. But you know, if the middle was 3 dB of gain reduction, that would tell you that it's meant to be used a little bit more in a subtle way. But this is kind of a glue thing, right? And so it kind of takes and adds like a. I like the vintage one in this case because it added a little bit more character to the sound, to the guitar. But here's the modern version. Yeah, there's more gain reduction in the vintage mode. That's just sort of coming up, but keeping the settings basically the same. You can hear how one gives you like a more modern, clearer sound. This kind of gives you like a warming characteristic. That's why I chose it there. You know, and a similar kind of thing with bass, right? If we work with this on bass. Let me kind of see if I could dial this in a little better here. Right, nice, really cool. You know, I really love that that vintage setting. But even here, going with the modern setting, how you know you could really glue a sound together. Uh, Maybe sometimes too much, but I like that. It's kind of Varimu compressors are really great at that. You know, for this type of thing. All right, so I did it a little bit more in a subtle way there, just to kind of get a sense for what that's about. And then I put one on the drums here, so let's see if I can take the drums here, just solo them up. Come back to the reverb in a sec. And so with this, you also get the sidechain filter, which I had added in there. There's also a wet-dry control, so I could kind of balance the wet-dry with it. But I kind of dig the vintage one here as well. Kind of really adds like a, you know, more character to it, where the other one, it's nice to have that option where one kind of preserves a bit more of the frequency response and adds like a shine around everything, and then this one gives it a bit more grit and vintage character, which is cool.
I see the headlines in the morning,
The other thing is the reverb,
and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us who...
and there are two of them. There is the 305R.
I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us who may be easily deceived.
Now, my settings for the two are different, right? So one, you have like a cleaner, more modern sound, so you're kind of seeing like a similar thing to the stay level compressor or the V-comp. Similar kind of thing. They add a pre-delay feature over here, which is cool. This is even with the oversampling off, and you can just kind of hear the clarity of it. There's also a width control. You could also drive it a little bit here.
I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe.
Oh, hold on.
These...
Link those together.
I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us who may be easily deceived. They're building cars that drive themselves now, sending civilians into space.
Right, just kind of adding a little bit of that saturation by driving into it a little bit more. There's no control over reverb time. You do have the pre-delay, as I mentioned, right, which you can add in. And then the tone shaping, right?
I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us who may be easily deceived.
Right, so I can kind of open up by, carving out some of the mids. Some of the frequencies here, I'll just zoom in, 150 hertz, 600, 2K, 6K, right?
I see the headlines in the morning, and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning for those of us who may be easily deceived.
And then we have, you can unlink the two sides, which allows you to kind of, make some adjustments here to, kind of change up the sides. Hold on one second, I gotta zoom out here.
I see the headlines in the morning,
Create a little bit more variation.
and I don't know what to believe. These papers should come wrapped up with a warning.
And it just monos the
For
return.
those of us who may be easily deceived.
Really amazing sounding reverb. Great capture of that. Hard to capture like the detail of a spring reverb and have it. I don't have any experience with any of the hardware here, not the AudioScape versions of these anyway. Well, this is an AudioScape creation, as is the Golden Pre. But really amazing sounding stuff. Kiive has done some really spectacular work here with these plugins and with their plugin emulations, and I think they've done spectacular work here. Again, I have no basis of comparison to the original to see how true it is to the original, but at this point, it doesn't matter. If it sounds great, it sounds great, and ultimately that's the driving factor here. Very cool. I was really blown away by this, as I have been. You've noticed I've done a few Kiive audio emulations recently because they're doing really great work, and these are no exception. So definitely worth checking out. Plugin of the week from Kiive Audio in collaboration with AudioScape. The V-Comp, right, which is the stay level vintage limiter, and XR-305R, the spring reverb, and the Golden58 tube preamp. Plugins of the week.